Welcome to the Careers by Jenn podcast, episode 242. This time on the podcast, Jenn speaks with Toni Patterson about overcoming working mom guilt. Great idea. By overcoming working mom guilt, you will have more time and energy to feel guilty for something else you did to mess up your kids.
You're listening to the Careers by Jenn podcast. I'm your host, Jenn Swanson. This is the podcast that helps you to get the job, love your work, and advance your career. Careers by Jenn is a listener-sponsored podcast, and if you like the content, please consider supporting the show as a patron. You can do so for as little as $1 a month. Head over to CareersbyJenn.com and click on support to learn more. Happy New Year! I hope you had a wonderful end of 2019 and are ready to start fresh here in 2020. You may have noticed that I took a couple of weeks off. I was very busy with my work as a church pastor, and I facilitated a half-day workshop with my company, and then, of course, spent time with family, which was wonderful. So the podcast had a little break, too. But we are back, and we are back with a very long lineup of amazing guests to share with you over the coming weeks. Before we get into today's episode, I want to share some Apple Podcast reviews with you. The first one is titled, "The Show for Info on Landing the Job." Jenn has an awesome delivery of great content for those looking to land their next job or start their career. From setting goals to communication, she, along with her guest, have it all covered. And that was from Mike via Apple Podcasts in the United States. Thank you, Mike. The next one is titled Great Info. Great info and practical for a better work life. That was from Isaiah 431. Also in the United States. So thank you, Mike, and thank you, Isaiah. I really appreciate you leaving the reviews. Thank you so much. If you would like to leave us a review, please search Careers by Jenn podcast in the Apple Store for your country and leave us a rating and a review, and you may just hear it read out soon. Today's guest is Toni Patterson. Toni is a career mentor who works with corporate women striving to attain even greater career success without burning themselves out in the process. Toni has coached women to obtain their dream jobs, to create a career path in their current work environment, and to overcome mindset blocks to career success, and more. And today our show is titled Overcoming Working Mom Guilt. So I hope you enjoy my conversation with Toni. Toni Patterson, I'm going to start by asking you this question. Is mom guilt put upon working moms by society or by the working mom herself?
Yeah, wow, that is such a great question. And honestly, I think it's both. I think it's both, right? I think we all know that traditionally in society, there's an expectation that the mom is the one who takes on more of the role with the children. And I think in a lot of cases, that's shifting. I've seen it shifting. There's been a lot more paternity leave that I've observed, and other ways in which, fathers are taking larger and larger role, and that's wonderful. But it's still very much heavily skewed towards mom. And I certainly know that in society, where a mom is doing X, Y, and Z for her kids, it's expected. It's not commented upon if she's doing it, right? Whereas when a father's doing it, it's, celebrations and, oh my gosh, he's such a great dad. And conversely, when there are certain things that are, quote unquote, expected from a mom, and it's not being done, or it's being done by dad, there's often like kind of a side eye, and like I said, I think things are getting better, but society definitely plays a role. But, having worked with so many women, I work, pretty much exclusively with women who are looking for career advancement and job change. And, I see the mom guilt emanating from them directly too, right? It's very much, moms want to, or most, really want to be there for their kids in a certain way. They want to be the main support or a primary support, and they want to be available to their kids. And so they bring it on themselves too, right? It comes from both directions. But I do think that it can be addressed if we, can control what we can control, which is ourselves. And if we can do certain things to kind of alleviate that guilt within ourselves. And so even if society is saying X, Y, and Z, if we're kind of standing firm in, look, I like work, I enjoy what I do. Of course, I love my kids and I want to raise my kids and, do great things with them and for them. But it's okay that I have this other passion. Then I think that would go a long way to, to start shifting things in a positive way.
How debilitating can it be? Have you noticed?
Yeah. What I notice is that it can affect both things, right? It can really affect your work as well as your home life, because, mom guilt, at least the way I'm describing it, working mom guilt, is where you are, no matter where you are, you're unsatisfied, right? You're at work and you're feeling guilty, or anxious or uncertain or in doubt because you're feeling as though you're not giving your all at home to your kids. But when you're with your kids, if you're, a conscientious professional, then you're also feeling the same way at work. Oh, this is time I could be spending doing work, or getting ahead on this or making this thing perfect. And so it's extremely debilitating because it negatively affects both of those two key areas.
And so what can a person do? What would be, the first few steps that you could take to help alleviate some of this? Because it must be exhausting.
Yeah, it can be exhausting, and I know from personal experience that it really truly can be exhausting. But I think the first thing that I would recommend people do is to really acknowledge and recognize that feeling, or those feelings, right? Guilt, those feelings of anxiousness or uncertainty or, doubting yourself or beating yourself up, it doesn't serve you, right? That feeling doesn't help you, doesn't move the needle, doesn't make you a better mom. Feeling that feeling, it certainly doesn't make you a better worker. So really trying to accept that, acknowledge and accept that feeling of guilt doesn't serve you, and then to really kind of dig into, and it's, easier said than done, but to really try to dig into giving yourself grace, giving yourself grace for not being everything to everyone. Because, and I think it's mostly women that beat themselves up for not being everything to everyone. And that's sort of bred into us, that we need to be perfect and that we need to be everyone's everything, even if it's to the detriment of ourselves. So really to just kind of think about how you would respond if your best friend came to you and said, I'm feeling so upset because I couldn't be everything to everyone, or I couldn't keep all those balls in the air, or I needed to miss, my son's basketball game because I had this big meeting at work that couldn't be shifted, or I needed to, leave work at 5 because I absolutely promised that I'd be at my child's, school play, and I just couldn't miss it, And if your friend came to you and said something like that, you would absolutely, tell them, look, it's okay, right? Nobody is expecting you to be perfect. You're doing the best you can, with what you have and with the circumstances, and you're a great mom, and you're great at what you do. But when it comes to ourselves, we tend to forget all of that and are really kind of just focused on everything that we're not doing and all the ways in which we're not being the perfect person. So my number one first thing, is to really trying to get yourself into a mental space that it's okay. It's okay that I'm not everything to everyone.
And I know a couple of men who do the same thing to themselves
Mm,
when they have to miss things with kids. And
yeah.
I know that it can be agonizing for men and women. I was a working mom my whole life. I was fortunate in that I worked shift work and was able to work my shift around, looking after my kids.
Mm,
But I still miss things. If I was home with them all day, I would miss bedtime. If I was working in
right.
the day, I would miss, the exciting things that happened during the day, and I'd be at home and they'd be soon to bed. So it wasn't a very long time with them in the evening. So it
Hmm.
doesn't seem to matter if you are working, you always have that sense that you're missing out.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and at the same time, sometimes it was a relief to go to work.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I've always said, like, I personally am not built to be a stay-at-home mom. So it's not like, oh, if I didn't have, if I had all the money in the world, I would stay at home. No, I enjoy working. I enjoy having this other thing that's for me. And so, like you said, it can be certainly a relief to separate yourself and do something else.
Right. So the first step is to recognize your feelings. What would be
Yeah.
the next thing to do?
Yeah. So a lot of the people that I talk to fall into kind of two broad areas, right? It's the people who actually love what they do, they're or at least like it, right? They like what they're doing, and they're interested and they're excited and they like having this thing outside of the work and outside of the home, outside of the family, but their guilt is kind of steeped in it's not okay, right? It's not okay to have this other thing that's for me or that I enjoy. And then there's another kind of large bucket that I see, which are people who they actually don't like what they do, right? They're unhappy with what they're doing, but they're in it because for financial reasons or just because this is where I ended up. This is the type of work I ended up doing, and I'm going to stick with it, or other reasons or factors. And I kind of have different thoughts for the two areas, but for those who are, actually enjoy what they do, or, they're in a good space about what they do and they enjoy it, then, my main tips are these. Like, so the first one really is, to really get okay with it, right? It is okay to love what you do. It is okay to have, um, something that you love outside of your family, right? Like something that's fulfilling just for yourself. Um, and, kind of getting comfortable with that, making that shift goes a long way to alleviating your guilt. And then the way that you do that um, is to talk with your kids, right? You talk with your kids about your work, you talk with them about the practical things, right? And of course, depending on the age of your kids, depends on how deep you go into these types of conversations. But yes, of course, the practical things, like your work is what gives you the money to allow you to put a roof over their head and give them food and give them the things that they need, and also the things that they want. But I think, and a lot of parents do that, and that's important, but I think what's more important as it relates to this conversation and about kind of digging into alleviating that guilt is to talk to them about how you feel about your work, right? So you enjoy working, right? You enjoy having this other thing that's just for you. And one way that I recommend doing that is to compare your work, and how you feel about your work to something your kids enjoy, right? So your kids, their favorite activity of all time is, going to amusement parks, just as an example. And they love going to amusement parks, and they'll do what they need to do to get there and have a great time. And it's something that they work hard um, you know, to convince you to take them and all that kind of stuff. And you can say, look, the way you feel about going to amusement parks, and maybe that's not the best example because they might, envision that your work is like an amusement park. Um,
Or say, how come you get to go all the time
right,
and I only
exactly,
get to
right.
go sometimes?
But, this food, your favorite food, like pizza or whatever it is, the way you love pizza, that's, you love this other thing. It's not me. And I know that just because you love pizza doesn't mean that you love me any less or that you love pizza more than me, but that it's this other thing in your life that you really love and really enjoy. And that's how I feel about my work. Like, it's not just this place that, gives me money so we can buy stuff. It is truly something that I enjoy. I like the people that I'm around. I like the things that I do. I get to do some really interesting things, like say all that, explain all that to them, so that they understand that, this version of you that they get, like this kind of fulfilled version, this happy version, it comes from a lot of different areas. Yes, it comes from them. And it comes from, the satisfaction and joy you get from being a parent and, helping to grow amazing individuals, but it comes from other things outside of them. And I think it's really healthy for kids to know that you're a lot of things, right? Like as a parent, you're a lot of things. You have a lot of roles, and other things contribute to who and what you are. And I think, talking to your kids about your work in this way is valuable for them, right? They're looking at you all the time. They're seeing what you're doing. They're seeing how what you're doing makes you feel and that sort of thing. And so if you can express to them like, hey, there's this other thing, there's this world of work and you're going to be a part of it one day. And it's not all drudgery, right? It's not just this thing that we resent doing, but we have to do it so we can make money. But it's another source of joy and fulfillment and interaction and all those things that benefits your kids, right? And it also benefits you, right? Your kids are not envisioning that you're going off having this great time and choosing this other thing over them all the time just because. Like, they can really start to see where your work fits into your life beyond just, the money, that kind of thing.
So that's if you love your job. What if you're
Yeah.
doing your job because it's a job and you have
Yeah.
to pay the bills?
Yeah. Yeah. And so listen, we do. We are often in points in our, like, say, our career where we are doing a job that's just a job. And that, in my opinion, it's very confusing for your kids and for yourself to know that there's this thing, you hate doing it, you resent doing it, but you still choose to do it over your family things on a daily basis. And so the money piece, is likely the reason why you're continuing to do that job, right? I need the money, right? Or the hours work with our lifestyle or something like that, or whatever it is for you. But it's a lot harder to engage with your kids on just that money level, right? Because in either case, like I said, you should be having that money conversation and how it's valuable and why it matters, and how that in and of itself affects our lives. But, imagine the teaching, right, that goes into your child observing you being miserable, right? It's, how you're showing up at home, how you're talking about your job, how you're talking about work in general and all those things. Imagine the teaching that you're kind of pouring into your kids indirectly when they're seeing all that. So in that circumstance, like, if, I hate what I do, I just do it for the money and life is drudgery, but okay, I'll just continue living it.
Right.
In that circumstance, honestly, I do recommend trying to make a change,
Right.
trying to find something else, because it not only for how it affects your kids, right? Like what they're seeing and, oh, okay, I guess it's okay if I grow up to do work that I hate because that's just what people do. But just for yourself, right? Like, how you want to feel at work, how you want, everyone knows that when, you have these horrible, not just a horrible day at work, but, horrible weeks and months or whatever at work, how that translates into how you're treating your partner, or how you're treating your family, or whether you have the energy or interest in doing other things. Like, it really does have downstream effects. And so I do actually recommend in that circumstance to, like, just start the exploration into where there could be something better, because it is very confusing for a child for you to say, there's this thing, I hate it. I mean, say explicitly or even implicitly, right? In how you're showing up and all those things. There's this thing, hate it, I can't stand it, but I'm still going to do it instead of be with you. Like, that is a very hard concept for a child to understand.
And it's pretty tough. I mean, I live in one of the, well, probably the most expensive housing markets in our country.
Mm.
I'm outside of the city because we can't afford to live in the city, but to be able to live in decent housing in Vancouver is really, really challenging. And so there are parents who are working flat out to provide a home, and it's taking, two parents often, or two partners anyway, to live in some kind of housing situation with kids. And I've seen parents actually take on a second job to pay for dance lessons or skateboard, or
Yeah.
snowboarding class for their kids, or whatever the extracurricular happens to be. And that's challenging too, because if you're not happy with what you're doing, or you're taking on extra work in order to facilitate something for the child, you have to be really careful not to pass that guilt on.
Right. Exactly. The guilt or the resentment that comes with that. Exactly. Exactly. So one of the things that, there are obviously for all of us, no matter how hard we try, if we are working parents, there's going to be these times when your work, like, comes first, right? So um, even when you are, trying to do all you can and create this schedule or whatever, things come up, right? Emergencies come up, meetings come up, or it just might be your work. I mean, in my profession, um, as a lawyer, like, things come up all the time. So you do your best, but things come up, and so I think it's important for the parents to explain um, why this choice was made over that choice, right? And remind them when the opposite choice was made. So for instance, sometimes you're just going to have to choose work, and because, like I said, there's a big meeting, or just for whatever reason you have to get this, meet this deadline or whatever. But I think a lot of times what we do is we're kind of very superficial about the explanation. And I think, what we're left with is a child who just is unclear and feels uncertain about why that thing kind of mattered more, right? That's how they might see it, why that thing mattered more. And so I think it's important to kind of dive into the explanation a little bit more. I know I said I was going to be able to, we were going to be able to do the special Wednesday night dinner to celebrate you winning the big game or whatever it is. But this thing came up, and unfortunately, because there's a deadline, or because of this or that, I have to postpone, or something else has to change, and really make it clear. But so that's kind of one thing. But the other thing that I know a lot of parents don't do, and for many, many years I didn't do until my own mentors were like, okay, you need to make this clear too, is that there are times when you're making the opposite sacrifice, right? There are times when, yeah, it probably would be better if you worked a few extra hours, but you don't, right? So that you could get to your kid's game. Or there are times when you leave early to get to that, 3 p.m. ballet recital or music winter program at school or something like that, but that means that you're going to have to be working till midnight at home or that sort of thing. And oftentimes, we'll do that. We'll make those sacrifices. We'll slip out of the office, or we'll miss out on this opportunity for FaceTime or for whatever it is. And we'll go do the thing with our kids or for our kids, and we never really talk about it, right? And so they don't really know that the sacrifice that you made on that end. And it's not about, on the other end of the spectrum, making your kids feel guilty. Oh, look what I did for you.
Right.
But it is about, making sure they understand that this is not a circumstance where you're always choosing the other thing, right? Like you're always choosing your job. Whenever there's a decision to be made about what needs to be sacrificed, it's always your kid. You know what I mean? It's just making it clear to them that no, you do your best for them too. Because them understanding that, I think, helps both of you, deal with the disappointment.
Do you find there's a difference in the severity of mom guilt based on the age of the children?
I think no. Unfortunately not. And I wish that were the case. What I find is that so when your kids are very young, there's all the little activities and whatever, and you want to be there for all of them, and you don't want to miss a moment. And if you miss a moment, you feel horrible, right? But and your kid might, experience the loss, right? Experience you not being there for that event. But then they move on from that, And so you hope that as they get older, they'll be more understanding, and they might be more clear on, okay, well, I needed to make this decision in favor of work for, X, Y, and Z reasons. But what I find is that as the kids get older, their activities become more, right?
Right.
The
Yeah.
activities become more, and like kind of the, in quotes, the importance of the activity, right? So when they were younger, it was like this little program, in the preschool or something, where they're all standing in the front singing a song, and of course your child would want you to be there, and you would want to be there to take a little video, but it's them singing a song, right? As they get older, it becomes like things like with real quote unquote consequences, right? It's the big game, right? It's the time when I get to stand up in front of the class, in front of the whole auditorium, and read this poem that I wrote. It becomes more, and the kids, they don't, unfortunately, it's not like, okay, now that the child is older, they're just much more comfortable with mom not being there. No, it continues. It continues. And what I learned a long time ago is that you could be there for 99% of the events. The child mostly remembers the 1% that you didn't attend. Right?
That is so true.
Right? You know what I mean? They're not
Yes.
talking about all the times you were there. They're talking about the one time you weren't. And that's why, I feel it's important to really talk about it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry I can't make it, but to really kind of dig into it. And often what I recommend, for working parents, is to involve your child in the choice, like in the choice that you're making, to the extent you can. So for instance, it's a whole soccer season, and there's all these games, and there are multiple games, during the week, and that this is a busy week for you. And also that in your child's mind, all four of these games are, the season making games, that they're all so super important. But it's just simply not possible for you to be involved in all of those games. So involve the child and say, look, I know that this is a busy week for me, And I also know that this is an important week for you. I think of the 4 games, I can be at 2. Which 2 would you like me to be at? Involve the child in the decision. Um, and then, they can feel like you're invested in what they're doing. They can feel like, what's going on there in their lives is part of your decision making process. You're always on their mind, and you're letting them say, well, the the fourth game and the first game are the ones that are critical. If you can be there, I'll be disappointed, of course. They're always going to be, it's going to be a little bit of disappointment, but I would love if you could be at those 2, because those are the ones that I'm going to be starring in, rather than you showing up at the other 2 where I'm going to be on the bench or whatever it is.
Right. That's a good point, is to help them help you decide.
Right. Exactly.
So how did you get into this kind of work, Toni?
Yeah. So the broader career coaching work is I got into because I'm a lawyer. I'm a practicing lawyer, still practice law as well as do the career coaching. And what I found like a number of years ago, shortly after I had my daughter, was that a lot of my colleagues were coming to me. So I'm, a single mom, obviously in a demanding profession, and also a litigator. So trying lawsuits and all sorts of things. And my colleagues would be coming to me saying, how are you doing this? Like, how are you keeping it all together? Because you got a lot going on, you know? And I didn't really feel like I had it all together. I felt like I was just kind of keeping my head above water. But from the outside in, it looked like I was, keeping all the balls in the air. And what I did realize, in talking with them and trying to help them navigate, their own schedules and how to, really navigate their own careers while having families and while trying to advance and that sort of thing, I enjoyed doing it. I had my own kind of ways of doing it that were unique and that kind of needed to be developed to kind of keep the balls in the air. And it kind of just, informal mentorship at first, and then really grew into learning, coaching and how to really work with people at all aspects of their career to help them grow. And then, of course, the working mom guilt came because I had a lot of it. And I really needed to figure out, how to navigate, because it wasn't serving me, and I wasn't ever present anywhere. When I was with my daughter, I was feeling horrible because there was more that I could have been doing at work. And when I was at work, I was feeling horrible because I was, not able to be there for that random event that happened at 3:00, and I couldn't be there because I needed to be in this meeting and whatever. So I really needed to find ways to kind of reframe how I was seeing myself as a parent, reframe how I was showing up at work and what I was able and willing to give to work, and be accepting that, there's only 24 hours in a day. There's only one me, but that I can still be a great mom, even if I'm not at every single thing, or if I'm not available 100% of the time. And I can still be a great worker if I decide that, no, today I really do need to leave by 3 to get to my daughter's ballet recital.
That's good inspiration for the idea of being present in the moment.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
As we beat ourselves up a lot as parents anyway.
Right.
and to be with your child and actually be distracted in your brain and feeling all sorts of feelings about being elsewhere is really actually missing being there anyway.
Exactly. And that is exactly what was happening. I'd be sitting with her, but thinking about things that I could or should be doing at work, or that thing that happened or went wrong. And so it was really truly just a series of wasted opportunities on both sides.
Right. So it's great that you're helping people to overcome that now.
Yeah, yeah, and it makes a world of difference, like in people's personal lives, as well as in their careers, and that's what like kind of excites me about it.
So, where can people find you if they want to know more?
Sure, sure. So the easiest way to find me is on at my website, which is www. ToniPatterson.com. And I'm also on Facebook. I have a website called Career Success Without Burnout. So either one of those two ways would be a great way to find me.
Fabulous. And do you have a last piece of advice for the Careers by Jenn listener today?
Yeah, so one last piece of advice that I would share with your listeners, and I know that you've heard, if you're a listener of this podcast, then you care, you care deeply about your career trajectory. You want to make the most of the jobs where you are and the next jobs that you have going forward. So take the time you need at each aspect of your career to figure out, how to make the most of it. So if you're in a place where you are, and in the context of this, guilt that we've been talking about, if you're in a place where you are, feeling the guilt of not being the best parent you could be, or not being the best worker you could be, take the time out to actually think through what ideal looks like for you, right? Ideal could mean that you, just like what we talked about, that you're just present wherever you are. Or it could mean something more. It could mean that you cut back on doing X so that you could do more of Y, or that you make dedicated times out to be with your kids so that you can be fully present at work. A lot of times what we do is we just kind of go through day to day without really thinking through it, feeling the feelings of guilt and all other types of feelings, feeling frazzled and overworked and all those types of things. But we just go on with our day, and then another day comes and we just keep moving forward. But take the time you need to figure out exactly where you are, what you want to feel, how you want to show up as a parent, how you want to show up in your role at work. And then once you have some clarity around, who you want to be, how you want to be there, then you can take the action steps to move forward to help yourself be the worker you want to be, the parent you want to be, and to do it in a way that you don't need to feel guilty about it.
Hmm. Toni Patterson, thank you so much for taking the time today and helping us navigate this topic.
Thank you so much for having me. Hope it was helpful.
You've been listening to Careers by Jenn with Jenn Swanson. If you like what you heard, please share this. If every single person listening today shared this episode with just one friend, our audience would be twice as big, just like that. And the more people we can help with our content, the better. So help out a friend and help grow our audience by sharing this show with someone you know who would benefit from the content. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that, and together we can make a difference. Until next time, take good care.